All right, Josh, let's talk Texas A&M and Miami. Texas A&M is a big opportunity for improvement based on talent versus what we saw last year. And Miami is a team that you said might potentially be a lot better this year just because they've turned some things over. Before we get into this, I'm going to remind y'all, we're reminding everybody, every video, two things. One, please like and subscribe. We've had subscriber plateau a little bit, even though the watching is still happening. So please like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton. And number two, we have launched collegefootballnerds.com. It's a great platform for statistics, but there's also a lot of fun stuff there. In week 4, we're opening up our model to you so you can simulate any two teams with the same model that we use on the show, maybe slightly improved from what we've been using on the show. We're going to have a Nerd Nation top 25 that we're going to release that we let you vote on, but we're not starting until week 4 because we're also going to have a model that does a power ranking as well, and we're going to kind of pick those together. We're doing a pick'em. It's an annual pick'em with monthly prizes. That way, if you're just getting on the hype train with us, then there's an opportunity to win some money. September's $500, but opportunity to win some money as the year goes on. One other statistic or feature to tout that's NFLU statistics, that, you know, if you're a Texas A&M fan or a Miami fan and you want to track your college players in the NFL, you got one place to go, one page, one button, and it spits them all out week by week or season overall. You don't have to chase a bunch of box scores. All right, Josh, let's talk Texas A&M and Miami. I'm going to immediately kick this to you. I want to talk about the offense and Texas A&M and some things that I've said in the offseason. But first, even before we get into their games that we saw Saturday, I want to let you talk a little bit about reasons for optimism. Two teams that are kind of flying under the radar, maybe relative to what they should be getting in terms of praise. Reasons for optimism for both of these teams.
So both these teams had areas where they had real deficiencies last year, and you have good reason to believe they've improved. First, for Miami, we are probably the OG Josh Gaddis haters dating back to when he was first hired at Michigan. I'm proud to wear that button at this point. And you, I think, are the leader of the fan club. We always were skeptical of his ability to call an offense because he'd never done it before when he was headed at Michigan. And then at Michigan, it became obvious very quickly that he really struggled. The offensive scheme they installed early on at Michigan in his tenure was nothing short of terrible. And it was pretty obvious last year that he all but ruined a very good quarterback in Dyke. I think without him, they had a chance to improve significantly, and I think we've seen it. I mean, that team got pretty clearly dispirited last year because the offensive scheme wasn't very good. They couldn't score points in games that mattered, lost to Middle Tennessee State at home, and they just had to deal with the fact that they had massive offensive inconsistencies, and it started to trickle down to the rest of the team. With a better scheme, with a team that looks like they know what they're doing. And I know they were playing an inferior opponent, but that box score from this past Saturday with Miami of Ohio was 201 yards passing, 9.1 yards per, 17 and 22. They look good again. I mean, that offense looks sound. It looks like they've got reason to believe that they're going to be a good, sound offense in a way that they really never were, even against inferior competition last year. Texas A&M is another one. Texas A&M somehow flew massively under radar, and in a lot of metrics, they were the number one pass defense in the country. I mean, that pass defense was phenomenal. That Alabama-Texas A&M game wasn't just a matter of having the backup quarterback in. It was the fact that their pass defense didn't let that quarterback to do anything. There's a reason he looked as shaky as he did, and it was because of Texas A&M. I don't think Bryce Young would have come in and thrown for 300 or 400 yards either. And for some reason, we ignore it. The problem with Texas A&M was twofold. One, offensively, they were a mess, particularly early in the year. We put out some videos at the beginning of the year when I just watched their opener, and I said, look, Haynes King did well in that opener, but I think it was Sam Houston State, right? Maybe I've got the team wrong. It's been a while. But there were a lot of things mechanically that were off, and he was making reads that were actually bad reads, and it's like, look, this is just working because the other team's inferior, but this throw shouldn't have been made or it was placed in the wrong spot. And that proved out. But when they kind of got their quarterback situation figured out and they finally transitioned to Weigman and leaning on a little bit Max Johnson, you know, they beat LSU. They looked more competent. The problem the whole year, though, was run defense. They have a phenomenally talented set of young players in that front seven with a lot of depth, but they were really young. And it's hard for really young players, particularly on the defensive line, to play well versus the run, because run fits and schemes and gap assignments in the college level are so much more complicated than anything they're asked to do in high school. And they frequently got a lot of penetration. That's why they finished the number one pass defense, which showed the athleticism and talent, but they weren't gap sound. So they would give up huge amounts in the run game. And frankly, you had 18-year-olds and 21-year-olds, so at times they got overpowered. Appalachian State in particular, they could not keep Appalachian State from running the football. That team is going to get older. They're going to get more experienced. You can already see it. They're going to do a better job versus the run. They're going to show on the stat sheet. It's going to show on the football field. And as those kids get older and the defense takes a step forward, this has a chance to be one of the best defenses in the country if they can shore those issues up. Combine that with an offense with Petrino hopefully calling the plays that, again, even if it's just the improved version from the very end of last year, can actually complement the defense. And suddenly this A&M team is not only competent, but actually quite good. So between the two, I think these are the chance to be two of the most improved teams in college football from 2022 to 2023.
And you kind of touched on the thing that I really wanted to talk about with Texas A&M, in that the last couple of years under Jimbo Fisher, in terms of him running the offense entirely, what you saw was they struggled against good teams, okay, but even hidden in medium-sized or big numbers against weak opponents was the eye test and the statistics test that proved out that there were real problems in the system. And what I saw against admittedly an inferior opponent was a thing that we haven't seen a lot of in the last couple of years, and that's being dominant against an inferior opponent. Being a well-oiled machine offensively like you should be with superior talent. So all the questions aren't answered. We don't know if Jimbo Fisher's going to meddle or if he's going to get involved. But what I said in the preview was Texas A&M, if Fisher will step back, let Petrino run the show, that offense is going to be much better. And that was the major issue that they had over the last few years. So this is like step one, first hurdle cleared, and you get an A+. It remains to be seen if that's going to scale against a better team. But so far, I think that we, are seeing something that's pretty positive. What's interesting to me is we don't usually get into spreads this early, but I want to talk about these two teams as matchups versus kind of review pretty quickly. If you were just an average fan and not following the point spread in this game and just picking kind of where you think it would be, Texas A&M only being favored by 4.5 points would be surprising, given there's a pretty big talent discrepancy, and at least on paper, and A&M is coming into this season with a little more hype than Miami. What do you think is going on there with that pretty tight spread?
Yeah, and the numbers moved around, I think, between 4.5 and 7.5, but I think the short answer to that is just that Texas A&M still hasn't really proven they could score at a high level. I will be honest, when I went back and watched the New Mexico to Texas A&M game in preparation for this video, New Mexico was so bad that I couldn't take a lot from it. There were a lot of plays where, like Evan Stewart or whoever he's just clean running by the corner. And I know those guys are really good because I've seen them play, but there's a certain level where it was just an instant mismatch every single time. It was like, the equivalent of star receiver and a safety. Well, you had that matchup, but better every time you had any receiver in a corner one-on-one. It just was a no contest. So it's hard to judge a lot, and I'm sure Vegas has the same opinion. And they're probably in wait-and-see mode, just like we usually are early in the year. So that's a big part of it. I also think it's respect for Miami. But I'll throw back something there, too, because the other part of the point spread is that the over-under is only 48.5. So what Vegas is really saying here, even with a 7-point spread, is they're basically saying, look, we think this is going to be like a 27-20 kind of game. They don't think that this is going to be particularly high scoring. And if it's not high scoring, it's hard to give a big spread because it's going to be hard for one team or the other to run away from it. So the takeaway I would say here is they really feel like both defenses are probably ahead of the respective offenses. This is going to be more of a slow grinding game. and they favor A&M in their depth in that game, but not by that much. And again, that's not shocking given the fact that even in the New Mexico game, New Mexico did have some decent statistics running the ball. So if Miami can establish the run, that can keep you in the game, and it's going to make it hard for A&M to really blow them out. And I'm not saying they will at this point. I'm just saying the point spread to me is not really surprising.
Going to take a break to tell you all about a sponsor for the show. It's Memento. It's a sports app for people who like to attend games in person. You can track your attendance. You can see stats from the games that you went to. You can upload photos and even tag your friends that you went with, or maybe they didn't go and you want to make them jealous. Josh, I know when you like to go to football games, there's some things about those experiences that you would have liked to attract if you had it years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to stadiums all over the country. I've been with a lot of fans and friends and family. I've probably been over 200 football games over the course of my life. And it'd be really cool to be able to track all the places I've been and all the stadiums I've seen, put photos in one place, and being able to do that in the Memento app is really cool. And so when you remember that big win from the you can actually put that in the app and look back on it fondly.
I've got small kids, and they've been too small to take to football games or any games because you don't want to take a 2-year-old to a football game. But they're getting to the age that I can take them to games, and I would love something or will love something this easy to capture those memories and sort of memorialize our attendance other than kind of relying on Facebook memories or something like that. One other quick shout out to the team at Memento. We like to do things with a little design flair here, so we appreciate it. The Memento app is beautifully designed, y'all. The attention to detail, the user interface, the graphics, it's all beautiful. It's free, iOS, Android. You can get it. Search for Memento Live Sports Scrapbook if you're listening to us on the podcast. We'll give you a link if you're on YouTube. You can check it in the description. It's free. Go check it out. It's in beta, so CFB Nerds is the code you're going to want to use to get access. Go check it out and support the show. It'll be interesting to me to see a comfortable Tyler Van Dyke in what I think is a better scheme for him. I think anything that doesn't have Gaddis involved is a better scheme, but just I feel like there's been an artificial limiter on him. So I'll be interested to see, because I don't think A&M's pass defense is taking a huge step back this year. I think they're going to be a good pass defense. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like against what I think is a really good quarterback. And on the flip side of that, I know that A&M fans are pretty excited about what they saw in Noah Thomas. It's a good compliment to an Evan Stewart. It felt like in the past A&M has been limited in that they try to run their offense through one skill player. And if you could shut down that one skill player, then the whole thing fell apart. And I don't think they had that this year. Obviously, from a scheme standpoint, I think they're improved, but also I think that they've got enough skill player pieces to really stress and you can't isolate. So that's pretty encouraging. Josh, how much, we haven't talked a lot about the run games in this game yet, but how much of that is going to factor in your opinion, and given A&M's concerns last year as a run defense, is that a place where you think Miami maybe really can make some hay?
Well, that it's got to be the opportunity for Miami to be able to win the game, because I think Parrish is a good back, and I mean, again, Ja'Cory Merritt for New Mexico had 4.6 yards a carry, 50 yards and 11 attempts. They kind of had trouble with one guy and not the other, and particularly in a couple plays, really more than anything. But still, there's still reason to think you can maybe run on Texas A&M. And Miami, with their offensive line, they've had injury issues, they've got transfers and everything, but they've got a chance to have a pretty good offensive line, and Texas A&M at times struggled with those last year. So if they're able to hold point in terms of pressures, which has been a challenge for them, and get push in the run game, that'll be big. And especially if you get push in the run game and you're able to run the ball, then all of a sudden that causes A&M to really struggle to bring a pass rush, and it opens the rest of it up. I think the flip side to that, though, is really the wide receivers. To your point, A&M has really harped at times on one guy in the passing game, but late last year when Moose Muhammad came on and they had Stewart and Muhammad together, that offense really took to another level. Those two plus A-Chain made a good offense, and that's how they beat LSU. This year they've got those two guys and Noah Thomas, but they don't have A-Chain. So I don't know if the running game is going to be as good, and they're not going to probably get the same explosion from the run game last year. I just don't think they will without A-Chain. But from the passing game, they've got a lot more complete set of receivers, whereas Miami, like, I don't really know who the guy is at Miami. They don't have a great stable of receivers, and I know Ladson or whoever, I mean, they're solid, but Restrepo, they're not world beaters. They're not Stewart. They're probably not Moose Muhammad. So it is very much a game, in my opinion, where Miami probably needs to run the ball, and Texas A&M maybe doesn't. And that does start to lead into an edge to Texas A&M in my mind.
Same for me. I'm going to give a pick on this one. I think that, I made this kind of prediction in the offseason that Texas A&M was going to be a 10-win team. Looking at their schedule, I think that's going to be really hard. Their schedule, people don't appreciate how hard their schedule is this year. But I also think they're a legitimately improved by a considerable amount team. I think that the real unlock, even for their defense, is having an offense that's not going 3 and out, 3-4 drives in a row, or scoring 16 points. You don't know what that, or people don't know what that does to a defense. That makes your defense look way worse than it really is, because there's short fields, there's turnovers, there's them having to be on the field all day, and I think it's going to be much improved for A&M this year. I think A&M covers this game pretty solidly. Give me Texas A&M 31, Miami 17.
We're kind of on the same wavelength. I'm a little less confident, though. I'm going to take this game with Texas A&M 27-17, so still covering, but not by as much. I've interacted with Miami fans enough to know that they're probably going to be upset about that, but I'll deal with it. There are places for Texas A&M, as I've been going through this conversation, right, where I can see avenues for them to win the game in different ways. It is hard for me sitting right here, right now, to really say where Miami has distinct advantages that are going to win them the football game. Too many places where they have taken transfers to shore things up. You lose 2 cornerbacks from last year, and corners are some of the most important pieces. Actually, the secondary translates better in terms of returning production to winning than the offensive line does. People talk about offensive line starts. Corner starts are actually more important because they're so valuable to have an experienced secondary in college. Receiving core, transition in the offensive line, defensive line. The one thing I'll say is, this just feels like a game where we could get into it and one of these teams could look pretty bad, because they're playing between two teams that have a lot of high caliber talent through starters or recruiting. They're going to be able to test the other in ways that are not remotely translatable to anything that happened in week 1. And they're both teams that were flawed early last year and through much of last season. Both these teams had major issues protecting the passer at times, and now they're going to face a real team. Both these issues had games where the passing game just didn't work, and they're going to face a real team. So the odds of one team here just rolling out a clunker, I think, are kind of significant. And, if you want to spin it in a more positive way, which we never do, but, let's just, just for kicks and giggles. There are also 2 offenses here that can really expose people, I think, if they're clicking because of the talent they have. Either Van Dyke is a passer who, when he's on, can be really on, or the receiving game and skill position talent at A&M. So, I'm saying A&M 27-17. My prediction is that the offenses are probably going to struggle facing real defenses early in the year where the offensive lines haven't gelled and everything like that is going on. But, anything can happen. Won't shock me if this is an absolute slugfest. Won't shock me if one of the teams comes out and is clicking and the other one looks lost. And I do think if one team starts to really put up points, they may well run away with it. Because if one team goes into throw first, throw second, catch up mode, I don't think either one of them is really equipped to play that game. And so if this game starts to get out of hand one way or the other, the score could really climb. But I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to be a tight, low-scoring game.
All right, y'all, that's it for us on Texas A&M and Miami. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win this game. Remember, like and subscribe, and also check out collegefootballnerds.com. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. God bless.